Top 10 reason number 3. During the trial of the alleged 20th hijacker, Zacarias Moussaoui, a tape recording was played, allegedly from Flight 93, which included the passengers discussing how they were going to attempt to break down the cabin door using a drink cart. One astute student of the case wrote me to point out that this was ostensibly a cockpit voice recording, and that cockpit voice recorders do not record voices in the passenger compartment. Top 10 reason number 2 why these hijackers appear to be fake. The last words attributed on that tape to the hijackers who were facing imminent death was Allah Akbar, which is Arabic for God is great, God is great. According to a Muslim member of Scholars for 9/11 Truth, the last words that a devout follower of Islam should say when confronting imminent death is not those words, but rather, in Arabic, there is but one God, Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet. I therefore suggest that the writers assigned to this script simply didn't know enough to get it right. Number 1, top 10 reason number 1 for believing these hijackers were fake. Zacarias Moussaoui, this April, was subjected to a trial to determine whether he should be punished by life imprisonment or even death for not coming forward to reveal the plot, which the government maintained, had he done, would have enabled the government to have intervened and saved lives. I make 3 observations. A year before, April last, Zacarias Moussaoui confessed to a different plot. He had acknowledged that he had been involved in a plot to fly a plane into the White House in order to extort release of a terrorist, a sheik who had been imprisoned for terrorist activities in 1993. He denied he had anything to do with 9/11. That is the crime to which he confessed. A year later, the federal government has played a shell game, and now they're insinuating and implying he had something to do with 9/11. As my good friend Webster Tarpley has observed, this man had no obligation to come forward and to confess his involvement in a plot. Even if he had been involved in 9/11, we still have something here known as the Fifth Amendment. He had no obligation to incriminate himself. Third, and most tellingly, and this must have been incredibly embarrassing to the government, an FBI agent testified he'd been following Moussaoui. He'd been observing him taking this flight training. He had suspected that he might be involved in a terrorist plot, even to fly planes into the trade towers, though he suggested later that was merely a lucky guess. He testified under oath that he had told his supporters, his superiors, about his suspicions, not once, not twice, 70 times. And I say to you, 5 or 6 might be excused as ordinary incompetence. 20 or 25 may be criminal neglect. 70 times has to have been a matter of direct policy, deliberate policy. They were keeping these guys in reserve so they could use them as their cover story when the government itself perpetrated these dastardly terrorist acts.
All right. Webster Griffin Tarpley has been writing for over 25 years on government and state-sponsored and criminal network terrorism. He is an expert in uncovering how governments and how private corporations carry out false terror attacks, murders, other criminal activities, and then blame it on their enemies. He is the iconoclastic Webster Tarpley, an activist, historian, best known for his George Bush, the Unauthorized Biography, which was an underground bestseller and classic. And we are honored to have him here with us today. Against Oligarchy, a collection of Tarpley's essays and speeches, appeared on the internet and has also been a huge success at waking people up. He is the author of 9/11 Synthetic Terror, Made in the USA. Yeah. Okay. Well, if the government or elements of it were involved, it'd be so big it'd come out. People speak out, we'd find out. Is it the answer we have?
if you go and look at something like the Manhattan Project to build the atomic bomb, there were tens of thousands of people involved, and the secret never came out. So I think this is generally a red herring. Let me just say how I got into this. I was in Berlin on September 11th, so it all hit me late in the afternoon after coming out of a conference that I was attending. When you see something like this, you're confronted by an act of spectacular war provocation, obviously involving hundreds and hundreds of people, hundreds of millions of dollars. And you can figure out, for me it was about 30 seconds in Berlin to figure it out, who could do that? Who has the physical, technical capability? If you know the contents of the world in terms of secret intelligence agencies, you know it's the US, the British, the French, the Russians, the Mossad. And, of course, other countries in their own soil. But given where it was and when it was, given the suppression of air defense for 1 hour and 45 minutes and even more, it can only be a force inside the U.S. command, with some help, as we turn out later to find, from the British, from MI5, MI6. Now, the goal of this is obviously to bring about the war of civilizations, the Samuel Huntington thesis, the Wolfowitz doctrine about never letting any other power in the world get even regional predominance, and then the PNAC documents which publicize this entire thing. So you're dealing with a coup d'etat. 9/11 is a coup d'etat, one part of the government attacking another part of the government. I would say, if you want to identify who did it, we can talk about a rogue network, an invisible government, a secret team, the deep state, the fifth column, many words that have been coined to describe what everybody is vaguely aware of. That if you go back to the Bay of Pigs invasion, the Kennedy assassination, the Gulf of Tonkin, the Vietnam War, and in particular, the Iran-Contra drug running and gun running, this is necessarily the network that has the physical and technical capabilities to carry this out. Now, I came to this from having studied NATO spheres of influence terrorism in Central Europe, the Moro assassination, the Red Brigades in Italy, the Baader-Meinhof group in Germany, and also the Iran-Contra questions. And when you look at it from this point of view, there's a prima facie conclusive case that the only agency that's capable of doing this is one cutting across the Department of Defense, the CIA, the NSA, the National Security Council, and so forth. Now, that hypothesis has to be then tested by a rigorous research, which I tried to do for my book, 9/11 Synthetic Terror, Made in USA, and I think the finding is now conclusive. If you look at the absurdities of this story, we're given 19 patsies, a lot of them basket cases, a lot of them very low-grade subjects, a lot of people who would have difficulty even getting through a normal day without some kind of support, right? Some of them couldn't get a driver's license probably in any state except possibly New Jersey. So they're very low-grade subjects, and we're told that these 19 patsies were able to carry out these spectacular feats. The fact that they lived on military bases and were trained on military bases and were, I believe, reporting to terrorist controllers and case officers inside something like the Able Danger organization. You've also got the fact then of 1 hour and 45 minutes with no air defense. You've got the fact that the buildings had to come down through controlled demolition. It's a physical anomaly, as Professor Jones has said. It's clear also that there's no Boeing aircraft at the Pentagon, but rather something much more like a cruise missile. And finally, in Shanksville, the airplane has obviously been destroyed in midair, probably shot down, probably blown up in this way. There's also another level. This myth is absurd. It is intellectually and morally degrading to believe it. It is a myth of fascist Hitlerian proportions. The Nazis talked about the myth of the 20th century as nationalism and chauvinism. Terrorism is now the myth of the 21st century. We're told that the purpose of the United States for the entire foreseeable future is the war on terror and nothing but. That's no future for the United States or for the world. It is a racist and warmongering myth. And if you believe it, you will share in the degradation of the ruling elite of this country, who have, I think, they're headed for a tremendous crash and and dead end.